Just want to talk about the Joe Rogan controversy with Spotify and the so-called misinformation that he's promulgating on his podcast. Or more accurately, his guests are promulgating. Spotify have gotten an immense amount of pushback, so much so that people like Neil Young and Joni Mitchell have requested that their music be taken off Spotify in protest to Joe Rogan. And Joe Rogan's podcast is obviously on Spotify. They paid him a lot of money to get access to them. Joe has had a couple of people on, experts. One is a vaccine expert. It's Robert Malone, Dr. Robert Malone is perhaps the most controversial of them, but there were others too. And their view runs contrary to the, let's say, the scientific consensus. But Joe put out a video kind of talking about how he found that phrase problematic, the misinformation phrase. I actually agree with him because there are things not so long ago that if you said that, well, cloth masks are ineffective. If you were to say something like COVID may have escaped from a lab, it was all talk about bats and wet markets back then. But if you even hypothesized that it may have escaped from a lab in China, you would be shut down and probably called a racist, which makes no sense to anyone with a brain. But that would be seen as misinformation. But they're absolutely, the lab leak is more likely now than unlikely. The efficacy of the cloth masks are now highly questionable. So this is not misinformation anymore. Rachel Maddow on MSNBC, another ridiculous person. You can find it online. She said on the news, that if you get the vaccine, then COVID stops with you. You cannot get COVID once you're vaccinated. You cannot pass it to anybody else once you're vaccinated. This is not true. Why isn't anybody coming at her for misinformation? I don't know. I don't want to make the assumption is because she's a left-winger that, they won't come after her. I can't help thinking that if this was, Sean Hannity, who put something that was blatantly false out there, that he wouldn't get off as easy. So things that were misinformation a few months ago are now the general consensus. So who really has a monopoly on truth? Nobody has a monopoly on truth. I am vaccinated. I believe the vaccine works. I don't understand people that won't get vaccinated. But I am not for mandates, for forcing people to, stick a needle in their arms. These obligatory vaccinations, I am not for at all. I'm not a fan of the lockdowns either. But there is no reason to think that the vaccines don't work. Some people I've been pretty disappointed with. Sam Harris is one of them. And I'm a long-term reader and listener of Sam Harris. I still love him. But he put out a podcast recently where he said he won't talk to the other side, the anti-vax people. And Sam markets himself as a kind of Mr. Conversation, Mr. Rationality, Excuse me. But there are a few holes in the way Sam Harris thinks about things. It's taken me a long time to recognize them. Some have nothing to do with this, but yeah, I mean, he won't talk to somebody on the other side on this issue. He will on other things, but it seems he justified this by saying, well, it's not the right time to do it. We need to end this pandemic, and bringing an anti-vax person on his show is simply not a good idea. I wouldn't agree with the anti-vax person, but why not have the conversation? If their ideas are so bad, let people hear them. Because then everybody will be able to hear. That's why you don't shut neo-Nazis down. You let them speak so everybody can hear how ridiculous they are and say, no, thank you. But if you shut the neo-Nazis down, somebody there that hadn't made their mind up yet, maybe he's young and a little uneducated, says, okay, well, they're afraid of what this guy might say. Maybe he has a lot to say and they're just afraid of it. Maybe he's legitimate. But if the neo-Nazis were allowed, spew their nonsense, people would say, okay, these people are ridiculous. It's analogous to that, really. If you hear what the anti-vax people have to say, then you can make your own mind up about it. Sam doesn't seem to realize that when you shut somebody down, you don't shut them up. When you drive something underground, it doesn't disappear. It thrives. It absolutely thrives. That is why bad ideas are better being aired out in public so everybody can hear them for what they are. Plus, you know who they are. It seems like Sam Harris has it's an error in judgment on his part, in my opinion. The fact that he won't talk to somebody as reasonable as Brett Weinstein is a little astonishing to me. But back to Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan he might possibly be the most reasonable person on planet Earth. He's in the political center, maybe center-leftish. He talks to left-wingers, he talks to right-wingers. If there is an issue that he cares a lot about and wants to become sufficiently educated on, he will listen to all different points of view on it. He will listen to a right-wing view, a left-wing view, an apolitical view, if there is one, and make up his own mind on it. It's like if I'm reading on a topic that I really want to nail down on and really get educated and a good understanding on, I will read different points of view on the topic. Perhaps somebody more prone to left-wing politics than more right-wing politics. I'll stay away from either extreme, as Joe Rogan does. He won't bring a communist on or a neo-Nazi on. Obviously, there's you don't want all opinions on your podcast. But the reasonable people on each side he will bring on to really nail down on a topic, because no side has a monopoly on truth. I'm the first to admit that the right are not, right about everything, correct about everything. The left are not either. There's most likely truth on both sides, and on some issues, the truth can be found somewhere close to the middle. I do believe there's more sense on the right, not the far right, obviously, on the centre right, because the left has gone insane, as everybody knows. But Rogan, if Joe Rogan is too much for you, if he's too extreme, then you got to really reassess where you are on the political spectrum. If somebody in the centre, maybe even centre left, is too extreme for you, then you got to really reassess where you are. If you're that far left that everything looks right wing, then you need to do some reevaluation. And there's a lot of those people out there. There's a lot of those people. Props to Spotify for sticking by Joe Rogan, but I think that's for pecuniary reasons rather than moral reasons. But yeah, keep it up, Joe. Keep doing what you do.